A trailblazer in the world of sports media. She's Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree. She made history as the first Black woman to serve as an on camera host and analyst for Sports Illustrated's Laces Up. Her impressive resume includes Uninterrupted, I'm Athlete, and CBS Sports, where she currently shines as a host and analyst on Triple Threat. And she is not slowing down. This fall, she's stepping into an exciting new chapter alongside the NFL MVP and media personality Cam Newton as the co host of 106 and Sports, the highly anticipated revival of the iconic 106 and Park series. NYABJ welcomes Ashley Nicole Moss.
Oh, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it.
It's true. It's definitely true. You started out liking sports and writing, but did you know that you would go on to accomplish what you've accomplished so far? Did you see
Um,
that for yourself?
I think just like everybody, you have the dream to do whatever it is, fill in the blank. And you envision it going a particular way, I would assume. And it definitely didn't go the way I envisioned it. There were a lot of different stops and twists and turns along the way. But I think for me, I always knew I wanted to be in this industry, be in this position. It was just a matter of how, not if. And I think that's the biggest thing is just the sequence of events, not necessarily the destination. And I won't say final destination because I think there's so much more to do and to grow in this industry, particularly for myself and things that I want to do. But yeah, I always knew that I would be in the industry. I just didn't know exactly when I would get that big break, if you will.
What are some lessons that you've learned so far? Because you did mention some of the twists and turns, and what can you tell us about some of those twists and turns you experienced?
I think the biggest lesson is just kind of like your plan and your blueprint is usually never the way it actually unfolds. And I think the twists and turns for me is like, you graduate college and you do really well. I graduated top of my class and you think, okay, ESPN is going to be waiting for me once I walk across this graduation stage and they're going to have a job for me and I'm going to be set and good to go from that point forward. And that's not how it goes. And maybe it is how it goes for some people, and they're the very few and far in between. And it's that old saying, the exception, not the rule. Most of us are the rule and not the exception. And that's okay. But I think that for me, it was getting over that concept of you do well, you get rewarded. And although I do believe that the universe rewards hard work, it's never necessarily on the timing that you think. So for me, I mean, I did a little bit of everything early in my career. I was behind the camera, I was in front of the camera, I was doing a combination of both. And then, reality sets in and you're not really able to land a job in your industry. And I remember working part time at the radio station and part time at an optical because I couldn't get a full time job in my industry. And I did that for probably about a year and a half before Sports Illustrated came into my path. And it was just the realization that just because you have an idea of how something's going to go doesn't mean that's the way it happens.
And tell us how your love for sports started.
My dad, I mean, he's a huge sports fan. Growing up in New York, I was born a Knicks fan. I'm still a Knicks fan right there. Yankees, the Cowboys are just the non-Knicks team or the non-New York team. But my dad is a huge sports fan. It was a big bonding moment for us. We would sit and watch games, and even before I really understood what I was watching, it was just a moment to or moments to spend time with him. And then as I got older, it became less about just the entertainment value. Like, oh, I like watching, Kobe dunk the ball or Iverson do it, and it was more so I was really like interested in learning about what I was watching and why this play happens and why this trade happens and what does this mean and what is a triangle offense and all the inner workings and the logistics of basketball sports in general, but specifically basketball, that really just made me want to go into the storytelling and the analytical side of the game. And that just kind of took off from there. And by the time I was in high school, probably junior-ish year, I knew what I wanted to do and what I wanted to do when I got into college.
So how did your family react when you were like, I'm making a career out of this? Were they surprised? Were they not surprised?
My dad loved it, obviously. Um, but you know what? I don't think either of them were surprised. I was a kid who always was introverted, but when I got in front of a camera, I flipped a script and I became a totally different kid. And I was somebody who, in my younger years, did auditions for commercials and things like that. And being in front of a camera, being at acting classes, or being and I was part of drama club throughout all my school years, and being in plays, I just became a different person. I was always very comfortable in front of a camera or public speaking. I remember I spoke at my fifth grade graduation, and all the kids were like nervous wrecks. And I just went up there and I was like in my element. So when I told them that I wanted to go into sports broadcasting and be in front of the camera, it wasn't a surprise at all, because there were just little inklings of signs that this is something that being in front of the camera in some capacity was kind of the path I was gonna go on. It was rather, would it be acting? Would it be, um, you know, would it be interviewing the entertainment space, the sports space? So it was just a matter of what it would be, not necessarily the industry it would be in.
Who are your favorite kind of people to talk to within the world of sports?
I obviously love talking to athletes. I got into this industry outside of the love of the game and my personal relationship and my memories that I have with basketball and football and growing up and watching them. But for me, it was always a desire of mine to tell the stories of athletes, and more than just what they did on the court. I think a lot of the times we get so caught up in the X's and the O's and the wins and the losses and the stat lines of athletes, we forget they're people with so many different layers and aspects of their personality. And I always wanted to be part of telling those stories and pushing those stories forward, and uplifting athletes, and being in their corner, even though I'm on the media side. And I love speaking to them and just getting to know them as people. I also really just enjoy talking to fans. I get a I have a rep in the industry, for someone who's very engaging with fans and on Twitter, very active. And that's because, I remember being in that position and having so many opinions, and nobody wanted to listen to them and nobody cared, because it was like the media was here and athletes were here and then the fan was like here. And I'm always somebody who's believed and still believe to this day, without the fans, sports don't matter. And I am somebody who believes that the voices of fans are so important to what makes sports work, and what makes sports go around. So whenever I had the opportunity to have conversations, even if they're brief, about sports topics on social media, I like my fans particularly, to feel like they're being heard, and I don't view myself as above them. I just view myself as having a bigger platform than them. And I think that's a very clear difference that sometimes the line gets blurred there and people feel unseen and unheard. And I've never wanted to make people feel that way. I was just a fan with a Twitter account not that long ago. So I remember how it felt for sure.
Speaking of which, like engagement and
hmm
having fans, what was the response like when people learned about 106 in sports so far?
It's been split, I think very people are very happy. I think in this climate of sports, people are hungry for a different type of conversation around the sports world. And I think that there have been shows that have been kind of leading the charge in that. And I think people are tired of certain conversations or dynamics or personalities, whatever the case may be, and they're looking for something different, something fresh, something new. And I think specifically when you talk about Black sports fans, they are looking for shows and dialogues that represent them and the community. BET was one of the first to really put HBCU games on prime time and on network, and made it accessible for people all over the country to watch them. And I think that people are hungry for that again. So a lot of people are very excited for something new in the sports world, something that's going to reflect um, a lot of the conversations that people are having on Twitter, going back to the fans. not everybody are what I like to call like stat nerds. They like storylines. They like to talk about what an athlete's wearing. They like to talk about the culture of the game, not necessarily the analytics. And I think they're missing those conversations. And to the defense of some networks, there are parameters of things you can and cannot talk about. You adhere to your personal audience. And I think that's where BET is going to have a leg up, because our audience is going to be drastically different than the audience of, most sports networks. And then obviously there are people who, like myself, have very fond memories of 106 in Park and are very protective of the brand and what it meant and what it meant culturally. And I'm one of those people. I grew up watching that show, which is why it's such a full circle moment for me to be part of it. And they're a little bit more apprehensive, and they're kind of like, we should have just brought back 106 in Park. And I expected that. And we got to win those people over and just let it be known we're not trying to erase 106 in Park. This is part of the universe, but it's a different show in its own right. And I would just encourage everyone to just kind of give it a chance, and just know that at least I can speak for myself, and in the conversations I've had with Cam, we know how much the brand means to so many people, and we're gonna do justice by it. We're not gonna try to erase it or change it or be better than it. We're just gonna be different than it. That's all.
What were some of your favorite moments on 106 in Park that you watched?
Oh, so many. I remember running home from school and Chris Brown's Run It video debuted, and it was the first time I ever laid eyes on him, and the rest was history. And I was a breezy stan forever. I think obviously Destiny's Child performing and Michelle falling is something I can think of right off the top of my head. I think when the different hosts were introduced. Obviously, there were different hosts that hosted the show. I remember when Roxy and Terrence first made their debut, and then later it was Bow Wow and Keisha. And I remember Bow Wow, I think, kissing either Erica Mena or Tyra Banks on the show. It was just so many memories, and I really just looked forward to the surprise of who was gonna be in the mix. And you remember the August Alsina, and who's like, "I just told you not to ask me that." There were just so many memories, good, bad, somewhere in the middle. Just cultural moments that I think shaped so many of our memories when it came to music and entertainment. And I just can't say enough how much it means to be part of something that meant so much to me growing up.
Is there anyone, Ashley, that you would like to interview that's not in sports? Because you have also done
Yeah.
interviews with people outside of sports.
So many people. I would love to sit down with Rihanna. I'm a huge Rihanna fan. I just respect also the way that she's built her empire, and it's definitely something I've taken inspiration from, of never doing just one thing. And if you do one thing, that's your foundation and you grow from that. I would love to interview Idris Elba for selfish reasons. I would love to sit down with Ryan Coogler. I think he is just phenomenal. Same thing with Ava DuVernay. I think she is phenomenal at what she does creatively. I love Kerry Washington. There's so many people that I admire from afar for so many different reasons. I love how Kerry uses her voice for political issues and social issues and civil issues. And also that storytelling showcases itself in the films that she does and things that she produces. There's just so many people who I'd love to sit down with and pick their brain. I think that when you talk about people in creative spaces, there's just different conversations you can have, and you can walk away with so much more creative knowledge, I feel like, than you can when you interview athletes. I think athletes give you more, you're just in awe of just their athletic capabilities so many times when you sit down with them. But from a creative standpoint, I would love to have those conversations one day with some of those people that I named and people that I didn't name as well.
Could we see you maybe venture into film and television?
Yeah,
You're in the drama club.
that's always been the goal. I'm somebody who, I love sports, I love what I do, but I also have passions in so many other industries. I love, skincare. I would love to have a line one day. I've always been a big fashion girl. In New York, you see it everywhere, whether it's high end, low end, somewhere in the middle, thrifting. Um, And I started off going to auditions and wanting to be an actor. And it's hard when you're a kid, right? Because there's a lot of rejection. And I think that it takes a strong kid to deal with that rejection. And I wasn't good with that part. Um, I was like the Will Smith, why does they want me? So I kind of pivoted from that, but I always felt comfort in being in front of a camera and being on a set and diving into a character that wasn't myself. And I would absolutely love to go back to that. That's definitely on my list of things that I want to accomplish. And I'm hoping that in the next year or two we start seeing that happen a little bit more. The conversations are already there, so we shall see what they turn into eventually.
Be excited for that. Yeah. How did you learn to pivot and just like have more of a healthy relationship with rejection?
I wish I could say there was like some cheat code to it, but I honestly, the real answer is just it comes from experience and it comes from being in it. When I first got into the industry, I forgot who said, I want to say it was a Nicki Minaj quote, and I think it was in Vanity Fair, but I could be wrong. But I believe she said in an interview once that, it's unnatural for humans to know what other humans think about them 24/7, right? Like if you went into a supermarket and someone didn't like your outfit, or they thought you were unattractive, or they thought you were overweight, or whatever the case may be, you would never know it because that person's just not going to walk up to you and be like, I don't think you're cute. Like, it
Right.
just doesn't happen in the real world. On social media, anything can be said to you at any given time, and it's so within your reach. And you have to make a conscious effort to ignore it or to allow it into your orbit. And I think when you're younger, especially me, New York girls, we clap back. It's like, okay, you want to go? We can go. Like, so for me, I allowed the opinions of others when I first got into the industry to really take me out of my element and like, those Twitter beefs. And then you allow things to kind of simmer longer in your brain than they should. And when someone says you're not good at your job, you start to wonder, like, am I not good at my job? Maybe this opinion was stupid. And I tell people all the time, I wish there was a way to speed that process up. And I wish there was a way to kind of cheat code the system. It just comes with experience, and you eventually learn that the opinions of others says more about them than it does about you. And as long as you can say that the products you put out, whatever that product is, was your best work for the day, in an opinion based industry like this, everyone's going to have an opinion. And there are going to be people who agree, there are going to be people who disagree, and they're going to have people, you're going to have people who have 100 reasons why they disagree with you. And you can't fight them all. So I think for me, I just lead with knowing every time that I walk off set, I gave my best. I gave my most educated, most well spoken, most articulated, just most well rounded analysis. I hosted the show the best that I could. And if I couldn't, I'll be the first to tell me that. And I'll be the first to be like, I could have done that better, so that nobody can tell me that. So it's just a learning curve, unfortunately. And I wish I had a cheat code answer, but I don't.
You definitely are a natural, and you're on top of what you do, and your accomplishments do speak for that. But what are some other ways that you decide to self-improve? Do you watch back if you ever feel like
Always.
you need to, like the athletes? Okay, okay.
Yeah. I always watch my own film. I always watch things back and say, I could have said that better. I could have got to the point quicker. And that answer wasn't quite what it could have been. And I think that, you know, it's self critique can be healthy to a degree. It's no different than like when athletes watch their film. And I'm constantly learning. I understand that I don't know everything when it comes to the world of sports, and there are people who have been it longer than me and they know certain aspects of the industry better than me. And I'm constantly reading and learning and watching. I watch a lot of film, I read a lot of articles. I'm constantly educating myself on the things that I don't know and even the things that I think I know really well. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like a lot of the time people feel that by admitting you're not aware of something or educated in something, I'll be the first to say, and I've done this, and I actually did it with the Anthony Davis Luca trade situation. And I had sidelined my first game in Richmond, Virginia. and I was riding that high, and I had an early flight out of Richmond, and the trade happened probably like 2 a.m. East Coast time. So I wake up for a 6 a.m. flight. It's on the TV. I'm kind of like in and out of sleep, and I'm like, Lulu was traded. And I get a call from one of our producers at HQ, and it's like, hey, can you hop on HQ and give your opinion on this situation? And I didn't really know much about it. It was a big disarray. Like, we were all very confused as to what happened. And I said something absolutely wild. And it got put out there, and everyone starts roasting me for it. And I watch it back, and I was like, yeah, that wasn't a good take. And I tweeted that out. I said, yeah, this take was trash. And everyone was like, oh, I appreciate the honesty. We need more people to do. Like, I'm okay being wrong sometimes, and I'm okay admitting that I'm not the best at everything, and I'm not the best every single day. And even I have some takes and say some things that are like, that's not that great. That wasn't that smart. I think people appreciate honesty and authenticity. And I think too many times people in the media feel like they have to be perfect. And whether or not what they say is actually factual, whether it's actually a good take, they will stand 10 toes down. And I think sports fans just want honesty. You know, we're imperfect people. And I think that I'm someone who is okay with being imperfect. And I think that that's the biggest key, is just being okay with being imperfect.
What makes something a wild take?
A lot of it is depending on who you ask, because again, this is an opinion based industry. So like, I can say the sky is blue, and you could be like, well, no, it doesn't look blue to me, it looks kind of gray, right? But then there are things that are just black and white. Like, if the sky is actually blue that day and it's not a cloudy day, like, you can't argue the sky is blue. Like, so if you come out and say the sky isn't blue, it's green, and green's the best color, like, that's a wild take, because we can clearly see the sky is blue. So I think when you say wild take, it's basically anything that is, you can't dispute it. It's pretty much fact. And saying LeBron is better than Jordan is not a wild take, it's opinion. But to say that Jordan wasn't the reason that the Bulls won as many championships as they did is a wild take, because without Jordan, they're not winning 6 of them. So, I think there's layers to it. So there's just, sometimes people just say some wild things, but that's sports. That's what the industry is, and we need wild takes in the industry. It makes the world go round. So I'm not mad at those guys either.
We're going to get your takes. We're going to get some
Okay.
takes from you. But yeah, when it comes to journalism, what is your favorite way to get news? And what's your favorite way to break news?
Twitter is probably my favorite way to break news. I would say get news. I get a lot of alerts sent to my phone. But honestly, sometimes those alerts come after Twitter. Twitter is news central. I think the thing people have to be careful of, especially young journalists, is, when I was coming up, the blue check meant something, and people just couldn't buy it. That had to be given to you by Twitter itself, right? And I think that made it a lot easier to differentiate real from fake news. And I think now, with how Twitter is set up and anybody can get a blue check mark, you have to be extra cautious in what you're reading and digesting, and make sure it's factual, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, stuff that's trivial and stuff that's a lot more serious. So it is still Twitter for me, I will say, especially sports news, because it's breaking so quickly and everyone's on their phone. That's the best way, I feel like, to absorb things. But I think when you really want in-depth storytelling, I love, obviously, CBS Sports is great. We have great people there. Sports Illustrated, my old stomping grounds, The Athletic. Like, there's nothing better than reading a feature or a profile or a breakdown. And I recommend people to do more than just reading the headlines on Twitter, and actually click the article and read that article and fully grasp what the news is. But there's also nothing wrong with, getting your sound bites from Twitter, just making sure that that's not where the train stops. It's kind of the starting station, not the end station.
What's your favorite way to prepare for interviews? Has that changed over the course of your career so far?
I don't like to overly prepare. I am somebody who, I like to read articles about whoever I'm interviewing. I like to watch some of the podcast interviews that they've done. And take bits and pieces from that. I like to watch, scan their socials and stuff like that and kind of get a shell of what I definitely want to hit, some fun facts about them and things like that. Um, but I think the most important thing for me whenever I go into an interview is just to make the person that I'm talking to feel comfortable. And I feel like people naturally like to talk about themselves, even if they say they don't. They just have to feel comfortable enough to want to peel back those layers. And I feel like when you go into an interview too overly prepared, people tighten up and they feel like it's an interview. And I think that I've been able to get so many good interviews and clips and conversations in my career because I go in like, hey, like, just you and me. Like, none of this is, pretend none of this is here. Just you and me. Let's have a conversation. And people appreciate that because I think, especially in sports and news as well, it's a lot of like trying to get your moments. Like, gotcha. Gonna use that. Gonna put that in the bank. We're gonna put that out there. And I think people are very apprehensive about interviews because of that. And I think when you can kind of disarm people and let them know, like, there's no gotcha here. I just really want to get to know you and what's going on. And it just kind of disarms your person a little bit and you can get a better conversation from that. So I try not to overly prepare, but I still go in knowing what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely. There's
Mhm.
so much to ask you, Ashley. There really, yeah. What is one of your favorite interviews that you've ever watched?
Ooh.
Sports, not sports?
I'm a big fan of probably all of the David Letterman Netflix series that he has. I think the one that sticks out in my mind the most is probably because I just rewatched it, is the one with Jay-Z. And the Jay-Z's a guy who doesn't do a lot of interviews and he kind of keeps a lot of stuff close to chest. Much like Beyonce, she's not someone who does a lot of interviews, especially at this stage in her career. And I just loved how David Letterman was able to have some fun with him, but also like ask him the questions and get him to really like disarm and peel back and have a version of Jay-Z we don't get to see often. I really enjoyed that. I'm really enjoying Michelle Obama's podcast that she has out right now. It's a Michelle Obama that, Barack Obama was the first president I ever was able to vote for. Voted for him. Was it? Yeah, the second time I was able to vote for him. Wasn't able to vote for him for his first term. I was too young. Um, so that was my first ever vote, and I was so happy casting that vote for him. And when they won, I was just so excited. And I remember watching it, and it was just the whole thing. And I read Michelle's book, but seeing this version of her, not the First Lady Michelle Obama, but former First Lady Michelle Obama, has been so cool to just see her kind of let loose and cut loose a bit. So it's a bunch of the stuff that I'm watching and listening to. But I also just pick up clips from everything. I'm just like someone who absorbs a lot of podcasts and interviews. I just love to kind of see what everyone's doing and whatnot.
How do you practice self-care as a journalist?
Ooh, separating yourself from whatever it is that you do in the world of journalism when you can. I'm somebody who was recently actually I was having this conversation with somebody recently and I said, look, like make it a habit to not go places I don't have to be at in the sports industry. If I'm not required to be at Summer League, I try not to go. If I'm not required to be at All Star, I don't go. And it's not because I don't love what I do. I just think that break from being in something that you're in and day out. I mean, the NBA season, and I also do college, is so long. So you got to think from October to June, my brain is inundated with just basketball 24/7 almost. And I try my very best to separate my spirit and my mental and all that stuff from it when I have the opportunity to. And I think that's really important. I take time when I need time. I'm not afraid to take a couple of days for a vacation. I'm not afraid to be like, yeah, I can't work this Saturday. I just need a day. And I think that when you get older in the industry and you have more, not more clout, but you have more skin in the game, you become more comfortable with saying no. When you're younger, you're kind of like, yes, 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 I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it. Because you don't want to turn down an opportunity. You don't want to piss anybody off. You're hungry. All those things. And I'm still hungry, but I also know the importance of balance. And I know that me saying no to something doesn't mean I'm not going to get an opportunity down the road. Like the two are separate. So for me, it's just separating and making sure I take the time when I need it. Mm-hmm.
What's your relationship like with the other women in sports media?
You know, I would say that I have respect for all of them. I think making it as a woman in this industry is extremely difficult. And staying in this industry is extremely difficult. Obviously, there are women who I have closer relationships with than others. Amina Smith, my good friend, she and I kind of came through the ranks together in different ways. She's somebody who's a very close friend of mine. She's now killing it on SportsCenter at ESPN, and I'm very close to the girls I work with at HQ. And there are so many people in the industry that I, again, have respect for just for being in this space, you know. Um, but you have closer relationships with other people than you do some. And Monica McNutt is someone that I'm really close with as well. We share the Knicks camaraderie, and she's part of the family now. So there are definitely women I have closer relationships with, but again, I respect and just cheer everybody on from a distance, even if I personally don't interact with them.
What is the best advice that you have received as a Black journalist, and what you would pass on to other Black journalists, Black women journalists, and then just Black journalists in general?
I think for Black women, it's really important to, I think, and this can apply to honestly Black people, Black journalists. There's going to be, and I think it's a lot better now than when I was coming up, right? And that's because COVID changed a lot of things. I think that when I was coming up, there was kind of like a box. There was a way of doing things if you wanted to be in this industry. There was a way to dress. There was a way to talk. There was a way to wear your hair. There was a way to do your makeup. And I think COVID changed a lot of that. And I'm very happy for the journalists coming up in this era because the authenticity and individuality of the person is celebrated more than it has ever been before. And I know that people will see kind of the blueprints of what has worked for other people and think, okay, let me do this so I can. My biggest thing would be there's already a me, there's already a Monica, there's already a Carrie Champion, there's already a Jamel Hill, there's already an Aaron Andrews, there's already a Stephen A. Smith. I mean, the list goes on and on. But there isn't a you. So it's okay to take inspiration from people that you see. When I was coming up, I was inspired by Carrie Champion's unapologeticness when she was hosting First Take, and then when she went to Fox. I was inspired by Jalen Rose and being able to take rap lyrics and put them in an NBA breakdown. I was inspired by Erin Andrews' ability to disarm who she was interviewing and get really good content. But I never tried to be any of those people. So my advice would be to don't try to be anybody but yourself. Take inspiration. Take as much inspiration as you want and find how you can apply it to yourself. And also don't try to be good at everything right off the bat. Find one thing you're really good at in the industry and perfect that.
When it comes to identifying like what someone is good at, how does that tie into like, well, practice makes perfect or something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Because you got to think about it like if you are really good at interviewing and you feel that's your strong suit, but you don't have anyone to interview, how do you get the reps in? And I think that goes back to the benefit of social media and the things that we have now that weren't really a big deal when I was like in high school or when I was in college. I think that there are so many more platforms to kind of showcase what you can do, even if you're not doing it in the landscape that you want to be doing it. And I would recommend, even if you're doing interviews with whoever lives in the house with you, or you're interviewing some of your friends, or you're interviewing someone via Zoom, or you're doing game breakdowns, or whatever the case may be, find as many ways as you can practice what you think you're good at until you're in the position to do it for a living. And I think that, again, YouTube is great. And even if the world never sees those videos, you can watch your progression. But reps are everything. Practice is everything. I'm a much better host than I was 2 years ago. I'm much better on camera now than I was 2 years ago, and that's because I have a year and a half of doing it every single day. And just like anything else, the more you do it, the better you become. So I would say people have natural abilities. I feel like naturally I was very good at interviewing people. Naturally, I was very good at public speaking. But those are skill sets, and skill sets are kind of useless if you don't learn how to harness them and apply them and then develop them. So practice is absolutely everything.
Do you know the questions that you would want to ask Jay-Z, Carrie Champion, and Jalen Rose? You know, any of those people that have influenced you or inspired you?
Well, Jalen Rose is like my big brother, so I talk to him all the time. So I'm not gonna ask him nothing.
Go on, girl.
But what would I ask them? I think Carrie would probably be the biggest question I would ask her. She was kind of the first of her. She was like the domino for the rest of us. You know, she was the first woman I can think of, the first Black woman I can think of to be in that position between two men on a debate show, wrangling them, but also trying to utilize her voice. And I would ask her, seeing how the industry has progressed now and women in the industry specifically, how they have progressed, what would be her biggest regret when it came to allowing the entity to dilute her voice? And if she could do it all over again, would she have done it a little bit differently? I think that would probably be my biggest question for her. And for Jay-Z, what really happened in the elevator? No, I'm just kidding. I think for Jay-Z, it would probably be, I think being with someone like a Beyonce could be intimidating, and it can kind of, men sometimes are intimidated by really strong, powerful women. And I think that for me, the biggest question would be, how was it a conscious effort on your behalf to make sure that your star was never trying to outshine hers? You guys kind of shine together, and I think that's a interesting question because that dynamic is so powerful. And I'd be curious if that was something he had to just constantly be conscious of until it became a habit, because he was huge before he met Beyonce. And then you meet another star and it's like, how do you not do this and you do more of this, So that'd probably be my question for him.
I mean, you're in this field for a reason. For a reason. Okay, Ashley, some hot takes. I know you actually did a video talking about some of this already, but
Okay.
should Tyrese Halliburton have played or sat out?
Absolutely should have played. These guys work their entire lives to get to the NBA finals, and forget about a game 7. I mean, the Pacers exceeded everyone's expectations, and to be in the position to be in the NBA finals and it's a game 7, as much as the outcome is absolutely devastating, the regret and the what if I would have played would have been a lot more to deal with. Regret is something that haunts you and can haunt you for a very long time. The injury, he'll be back in a year. It sucks, the rehab, the mental, it sucks, but that's a year. The regret of what if I would have played, I think would have followed him a lot longer. So absolutely he should have played. He made the right decision.
Were the Knicks right to fire Tom Thibodeau?
Oh, Knicks fans were mad at me when I said this, but yes, I will say I wish they would have fired him with more of a plan. They're kind of figuring it out in real time, but I think Tibbs is a phenomenal coach. I think that he did amazing for the Knicks for the period of time that he was there. But there are coaches who are regular season transition coaches, and then there are coaches that are going to take you to the championship. And it just became evident that that championship DNA wasn't in him, and the Knicks have to strike while the iron is hot, and there is no more time to waste when you have a roster this good. So I think they made the right decision, but he was phenomenal, and I still think the best of him. I very much enjoyed having him as my coach for the years that we did, but the decision was the right one. So yeah.
What was that like?
I think, listen, Tibbs was great. Tibbs was phenomenal. It was just a lot of fun having him as our coach, and I think that he brought the Knicks back to relevancy. You have to remember, before that, the Knicks were the butt of everyone's jokes, and we weren't landing the big free agents, and people didn't want to come play for the New York Knicks. And him, Julius Randle, and that variation of the Knicks really started the trajectory and helped develop the Knicks into what they are now. So I think that Knicks fans need to be appreciative of that. I think a lot of them are, and just know that the chapter, the book came to an end, and it was now time to open a new one with a new coach who's going to take us to that next level.
LeBron or Jordan?
Oh my gosh. I never saw Jordan play, but I can appreciate the greatness of Michael Jordan. So I'm going to say Jordan because of all the accolades and what he did for so many other players, and what the Jordan model has meant for X, Y, and Z after him. But I will say this, it's a lot closer than people think. And I think LeBron is the greatest that I've ever seen personally. He's been doing it as long as I've been watching basketball, so that means something. So I definitely think if it's Jordan, LeBron's right there. So, or maybe right here. Yeah, they're very much one and the same.
And the last one, who will have the better career, Ashley? Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna say both. I think, look, they're two very different players. I think that Caitlin is very much a more all around type player. I think she is phenomenal. And I think that she's offensively gifted, defensively gifted. Her court vision is phenomenal. But I think Angel Reese is going to have a phenomenal career, even if it's not necessarily you think of her as this offensive powerhouse. Her defense, her rebounding, I think she's a future DPOY. She'll win one in her career. I absolutely believe that. I think they're just two very different players, but I think they're both equally great in their own right. And I think we should celebrate that and celebrate where the W is, and stop trying to pit these two women against each other. I interviewed Angel when she won the championship after LSU, and she's always been this ferocious. She's always been this, matter of fact. She's always been very confident in herself and her ability. So for people who are saying, like, she's got this new sweat, it's always been there. So I think that they'll both have great, long, successful careers. Are just going to look very different.
Ashley Nicole Moss. Yes. Is there anything that we missed? Anything I
I don't
missed?
think so. We hit a lot. I'm excited to see the whole thing.
Yes, likewise. I mean, it was exciting to have you on. And what's a message or any type of words that you would like to give NYABJ?
I just would like to say, I think the importance of just these associations in general are beyond words. And I think that if you are part of any association that allows you to connect with other journalists, please take every opportunity that is presented. Um, Camaraderie and sisterhood, brotherhood, and just having similar people who understand what the journey is like. And there's not that many Black journalists, doing things. And I think that it's really important to find that relationship, whether it's mentorship, friendship, just somebody to bounce ideas off of. You'd be surprised what that means the higher you climb in the ranks. I'm very excited because I'm going to the convention in Cleveland to represent CBS. So I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of faces that I've seen before, some that I haven't. It'll be the first time I've done it in a few years, but I'm very happy to represent CBS there, and just kind of reach back and give back. And I think that, I think back to my career, and I always wonder, if I had mentorship in my career, what it would have looked like sooner. Obviously, no regrets. God's timing, everything happens for a reason, but I'm very excited to be able to just sit down and talk with so many of you and hear what you're trying to do, how I can help. And it's going to be a fun time. So the work rewards itself. I encourage everyone to keep working, to keep grinding. And I wish I could say it's easy. It's not, but the journey is the best part. So don't get so caught up in the destination.
And how can everyone keep up with you? Your favorite way? You did mention Twitter. You know, you have Triple Threat. Anything else we
Yeah.
should be on the lookout for? 106 in Sports is coming out in the fall,
Yeah.
right?
So Triple Threat, we have 2 more episodes of the season. 106 in Sports starts in October. But you guys can follow me on all my social media platforms at Ash Nicole Moss. And we got some other things in the works in between 106 in Sports and the end of this NBA season. So definitely keep it locked, and we'll be posting about those soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley Nicole Moss,
Of
for
course.
chatting with NYABJ. Absolutely loved having you on, and don't want this to be the last.
Definitely not. Thank you so much.